How much of your day is taken up by boring and repetitive tasks? Chances are it's quite a lot. Today I'm going to show you a tool called Zapier with which you can automate all of these repetitive tasks. Zapier is an automation tool which integrates with over 5,000 different tools and apps that you can build automations around. For example, you could set up an automation that whenever you publish a new article to your website, that it automatically gets promoted and posted on all of your social media accounts. Or you could set up another automation that whenever you receive an email with an attachment, so a file attached to it, then it automatically gets saved inside of an attachment folder inside your cloud storage, so that you have all of your attachments in one single place. These are just two random examples of what you could automate with Zapier, but you can do much more. You can build automations for almost anything. And you can think of these automations like your own small personal digital robots that run in the background 24/7 and do things for you. Now, before we jump right into Zapier, I would like to show you the structure of an automation. Right here, I have the example that I mentioned a few moments ago. Whenever I publish a new article to my website, it automatically gets posted to all of my social media accounts. And this is how it would look like in practice. The first thing that you have to understand about Zapier automations is that they always start with a so-called trigger. A trigger is the event that kicks off or initiates the automation. So when the trigger happens, then the automation runs. In this case, the trigger is that a new blog post gets published to my website. But remember, Zapier integrates with over 5,000 different tools and apps, so that means a trigger could be anything that happens within any of these 5,000 different tools and apps. Every Zapier automation can have one and only one trigger. It cannot have multiple triggers and it cannot have zero triggers, because then there would be no proper way to start the automation. The next thing that every Zapier automation needs is an action. The action is what happens once the automation runs. In this case, it is quite simple again. Once the automation runs, the action is that I want to post the article on Twitter. And in this case, I even have a second action. I also want the article to be posted on Facebook. And that's the basic structure of every Zapier automation. It can have one trigger and one or multiple actions. Okay, now let's jump right into Zapier and start building our own automations. To do that, you can just go to the link miketutorial.com/Zapier. And when you open that link, you are automatically redirected to the Zapier website, or you can just type it into Google and go directly to the page. Once you're on the Zapier website, up here at the top right, you can click the sign up button and then enter your email address and enter your name. Once you've done that, click the orange button, Get Started Free. And now you have to choose a password. Once you've done that, click the orange button again, Get Started Free. And then you are redirected to this information page. You can just select your role that describes you and how many employees your company has. And in the next step, you can select a couple of tools and apps that you use on a regular basis. And based on that, Zapier can make you a few recommendations for automations that you can build. I'm going to choose Twitter here. I'm going to choose Google Sheets, Gmail, and also Calendly and Zoom, because these are tools that I use on a regular basis. You don't have to select all of the tools that you use here, just a few, so that you can get useful recommendations. And then finish the setup. And now you are inside of your Zapier dashboard. We are going to take a closer look at this dashboard in a few minutes, but the most important button inside of the dashboard is this orange button, Create a Zap. Now, what is a Zap? A Zap is basically the company's term for automation. So whenever you read the word Zap, it means automation. So to create a new automation, just click the orange button at the top left, Create Zap. And now we are inside of the Zapier editor. The first automation that I would like to build together with you is a simple but very useful one. If you work together with lots of different people and have to exchange files and documents with them, A lot of times what will happen is people start sending you the files and documents as emails. So they attach the files to the email and send it to you. And this can become messy rather quickly if lots of people start sending back and forth emails with attachments. And if you want to find an attachment, you have to dig through your entire email history. It's a complete mess. And so we are going to set up an automation that whenever you receive an email with an attachment, this attachment is automatically moved to an attachment folder inside of your cloud storage so that you have all of your attachments in one single place. The first thing that I usually do inside of this Zapier editor, I go up here to the top where it says Untitled Zap and click on that, because here you can change the name of the automation. And that's really important. You want to give your automations a descriptive name so that when you come back later and want to modify them, you know what these automations are all about. So I click on the title and give it a new name, Save Email Attachments to Attachments folder, and then hit enter. And now the name has been saved and our automation has a very good and descriptive name. Next up, we have to choose the trigger. So remember, the trigger is the event that starts the automation. In this case, because I'm using Gmail as my email account, I'm going to search for Gmail and click on it. Now I have to choose which event inside of Gmail should trigger the automation. You can see there are lots of different options. You could trigger the automation whenever you receive a new email or a new labeled email, or only trigger the automation when you receive an email that has a certain search term in it. But in this case, I'm going to choose this trigger called New Attachment. So this will always run whenever I receive an email with an attachment. So let's click on this. Click Continue. And now I have to connect my Gmail account. This is something that you will become quite familiar with this connection step, because Zapier needs access to all of your apps and tools that you want to integrate into your automations. So in this case, I just have to click Sign In, and now the so-called connection window shows up. And here I have to select my Gmail account, and then I have to allow access to Zapier so they can run all of the automations inside of Gmail. Then I click Continue, and here I can choose the inbox. In this case, I'm just going to choose my standard inbox where this should run. And I could also define a search string to further drill down on what emails should trigger the automations. But in this case, I'm just going to leave it blank, because all emails that include an attachment should trigger the automation. Let's click Continue. And the last step when you're setting up your trigger is to actually test the trigger. So when you click Test Trigger, what happens is Zapier pulls some test data from your Gmail account in this case. So it will look for past emails which included an attachment, and will check if it is able to retrieve these emails. And let's run the test. Now it loads a little bit. And as you can see, it says we found an attachment, and here is all of the data that it pulled from this email. I don't even know what 90% of that stuff means, but that's not really important. The important thing is that it found an attachment, and so the trigger is set up correctly. Let's click Continue. And now we have to set up the action. So what should actually happen once the automation runs, once it is triggered by this first step? But before we set the action, let's follow good practice and rename this trigger up here. Because New Attachment in Gmail, I don't love that name, so let's click the 3 dots up here and then rename this step. And in this case, I'm going to give it the name Receive New Email with Attachment. I think that's a more descriptive name, so when I come back in the future and want to make some modifications to this automation, I know exactly what it does. Okay, now let's set up the action, the second step. The second step should be that the attachment is uploaded to the attachment folder inside of my cloud storage. Now, I personally use Google Drive as my cloud storage, but if you use some other cloud storage provider, that's not a problem at all. You can just type it in, for example, Dropbox, and then you can do it with Dropbox or any other cloud storage provider that has an integration with Zapier. But I'm going to go with Google Drive. Now I can choose what action should actually happen. You can see I have different options here again. But in this case, I just want to upload a file. I want to upload the attachment to my cloud storage. Click Continue. And now I have to connect my Google Drive account again. So the connection step, the connection window opens up. I select my account and give Zapier access to Google Drive so that it can run the automation. Allow. And now my Google Drive account has been connected. Continue. Now I have to set up a few things. I have to choose which Google Drive. I only have one, so I'm going to choose that. The folder, this is quite important. Before this video, I've already created this attachments folder. So if you don't have it yet inside of this list, you have to create it first, because otherwise it's not shown here. So I choose this attachment folder inside of my Google Drive. Now the next step is I have to actually input which file should be uploaded. And if I click this field, as you can see, it shows this pop-up which says Insert Data. And this is the really cool part about Zapier. When you insert data inside of an action, the data is always pulled dynamically from the previous step. So depending on which type of email you receive, you can dynamically choose what should be added inside of here. In this case, I have tons of different options or variables that I can put in here. And obviously, whenever the automation runs, you have a different email and these variables change as well. So for example, here, right now, the subject of the email is here's an attachment. But if I send a new email, this variable would be different. And then Zapier inserts the correct value dynamically whenever the automation runs. In this case, I just want to include or upload the attachment. I don't want to convert it to a document, so set that to false. And the file name, I leave it empty because I want to use the same name as the original file, and same holds true for the file extension. So let's click Continue. And now I have to test the action. And this is similar to how we tested the trigger a few moments ago. However, be careful, whenever you test an action, the action will actually run. So it will actually execute with the real data. So test the action. And now it's testing it, running it in the background. And up here it says an upload file was sent to Google Drive about 3 seconds ago. So it worked. The action is set up properly. Before I click down here on this button, Publish Zap, I am going to do the same thing that I did with the trigger. I'm going to rename the action. So I click the 3 dots, click Rename Step, and in this case, I'm going to name it Save Attached File to Attachments Folder. And now I have a descriptive name for the action as well. Now I can come down here and click Publish Zap, Publish and Turn On. So it's immediately turned on. It takes a few moments, and now the Zap is live and it's running 24/7 in the background from now on. And now we're obviously going to test the automation because I want to show you that it actually works. So right here, I'm inside of my Gmail account. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to send an email to myself with an attachment to simulate kind of a new email. And the subject is going to be, hello, a new attachment. But the subject could be anything. I'm just making stuff up here. And then I'm going to attach a file to this. And why not use the thumbnail for this video as an example. So I'm going to choose the thumbnail, upload it as an attachment, and send it to myself. And now, as you can see, I have it here as a new email, as an unread email inside of my inbox. And now let's go to my Google Drive and check if it actually worked. So I'm inside of my attachment folder right here. It is empty, but now it updated. And now this attachment was automatically saved to this attachment folder. How cool is that? And this will work for any email that you receive in the future. So instead of having to dig through your entire inbox, whenever you want to find a file, you just go to this attachment folder and you have everything in one place. Okay, now I'm back inside of Zapier, and if I want to leave this automation and go back to my dashboard, I can just click this left arrow button up here at the top. And then the dashboard loads up again. And here inside of the dashboard, inside of this Zaps section, I have now a list of all of my automations. And here I can manage them, I can rename them, I can put them into folders, and I can even turn them on or off. Or I could rename them here and share them with friends. Lots of things that you can do here with your automations. Okay, now frankly, this is quite a simple automation, but it demonstrates the functionality and features of Zapier quite well, I think. We're actually going to extend this automation in a few moments and turn it into something more sophisticated with a filtering step. But before we do that, I want to show you another interesting section inside of the Zapier dashboard, which is this Explore section right here. So I click on it and get to this page. And here I can click Product. And then it says App Integrations. Or down here it also says Explore App Integrations. And you can also get to that page by just going to zapier.com/apps. This page is super useful because here you have a list of all of the different tools and apps that have integrations with Zapier. And you can use this page to come up with ideas for things and tasks that you can automate. Because the most difficult thing about Zapier is not actually creating the automations, but the most difficult thing is that you have to come up with an idea for automations. And this page really helps with that. For example, up here you can type in the name of an app that you use quite often. So I personally do a lot of Zoom meetings. So you can type in Zoom and click on it. And then you can scroll down the page, and here you receive some recommendations of what other people are automating inside of Zapier with Zoom. And you can draw some inspiration from that. Or what you could also do, you could scroll down all the way here. This is also quite interesting. Inside of this section, I can get a list of all of the triggers and actions that are supported inside of this app. So if I click on triggers, I get a list of all of the triggers that are available with the Zoom integration. And if I click on actions, I can see what actions are available inside of this integration. And based on these triggers and actions that are possible for this tool, I can then try to come up with ideas of what I could automate with it. Another super useful thing is when I go back to the apps page and then click on app families and then click Zapier. Right here I have a list of all of the tools by Zapier. Now what are these? Remember how I told you in the beginning that Zapier integrates with over 5,000 different tools and apps. And that's true, but Zapier on top of that built their own building blocks or action steps or trigger functions so that you can enhance your automations. And these tools by Zapier are super useful. You can think of them like utilities, utility function to turn your Zapier automations into something more sophisticated. For example, you could add something called a filter, which we are going to do in a few moments actually. You could use a utility called Email by Zapier, with which you can send out emails. A tool called Delay. So whenever a trigger happens, the action is not executed immediately, but only after a certain time delay. or you could even add custom code. If you know JavaScript, you can run code inside of Zapier. So lots of different useful features and utility functions that Zapier provides out of the box. Usually they don't work as standalone automations, but together with these other 5,000 different tools and apps, they are extremely practical and come in quite handy in a lot of different scenarios. So definitely check out this page as well. Let's go back to my dashboard by clicking this orange My Zaps button. And now that you know the tools by Zapier, we are actually going to use one of these tools. So let's click on the Save Email Attachments to Attachments folder automation that we created a few moments ago. Click the three dots, and then I want to view it so that we open the Zapier editor. And then up here at the top right, I can click the blue button Edit Zap so that we are inside of the edit mode. Now we can make changes to that automation. At the moment, the big problem with our automation is that whatever type of file we receive as an attachment, it is put into this attachment folder. But some attachments are actually quite useless and are not really relevant and shouldn't be put into the attachment folder. For example, I created a test email a few minutes ago, and as you can see, it includes an attachment called signature.asc. And it basically works kind of like a security measure that with this signature, you can test that this email is actually an authentic one from the real company and not a fake email. The details are not important of how this works. The fact is, companies use this signature attachment, and you will find it in quite a lot of different emails, especially emails from banking providers and stuff like that. And it is useful as a security measure, but it's not really useful inside of our attachment folder. We cannot do anything with these signatures. So what we're going to do inside of this automation is I'm going to add a step in between the trigger and the action. And the step will be a so-called filter. And you can find that right here where it says built-in tools. I'm going to click filter. And with the filter, you can create a condition. And this condition will decide if the action, if all the steps after the filter step will execute or if they will not execute. In this case, the filter will be only continue if, and then I'm going to choose the file name. Then I can choose a condition. And as you can see, you have lots of different conditions that you can use here. For example, you could set up a condition that this file name or the text should contain a certain set of characters, or it should not contain one. Lots of different choices that you have here. I'm going to go with the condition called does not end with. And then I'm going to put in the text .asc, because remember that was the extension of that signature file attachment, and all of these signature files, they end with this .asc attachment. And now it's quite obvious what this filter does. It says only continue if the attachment's file name does not end with .asc. This is some logical filtering, and what it does is basically, it works. The entire automation will work like before. But now, when an attachment has this .asc automation, it will not work. It will just not run. This filter step will say, okay, we don't want that inside of our attachment folder, and is going to abort the automation. This is a very simple filter. You could also add some more filter rules right here. You could include logical ands and or conditions. So you can build quite some complex stuff with this. In this case, I'm okay with this simple filter. You can extend it on your own if that's what you want to do. I'm going to rename this filter, follow good practice, filter out all .asc signature files. And then click continue. And now it actually ran a test right here. It says your Zap would have continued because the sample data that we got from the trigger, it included an attachment that was not a .asc file. So then it would have normally continued. So let's click continue. And now the third step, we don't have to change anything here. And so I'm just going to go up here to the button publish and publish the new version of the automation. Now it's live, and whenever I receive an email with a normal attachment, it should work just like before. But now the new step is when I receive an email with this signature file attached to it, it will not work. And we're actually going to test this again. So let's create a new email. I'm going to send it to myself again and call it email with signature attachment. And let's choose a signature file. Here I have one. Now the signature file has been attached, and if I send this to myself, and now if I go back to my attachment folder, you can see nothing happened, no new file has been added because our filter inside of the automation worked correctly. Okay, I just opened another Zapier account of mine to give you some inspirations of what can be done with these different built-in tools. So for example, here I have this automation called Send Invoices to Accountant every month. And this is a really cool one. And as you can see, the automation works as follows. At the beginning of every month, I want to find out what the last month's invoice folder name was. Then I want to find this invoice folder inside of my Google Drive. Then I want to send the invoice folder with all of the invoices to my accountant so that they can do bookkeeping with it. And then the last step is to create a new invoice folder for the next month. This is an example of quite an advanced Zapier automation, which is really useful and saves me a lot of time. And as you can see here, the first two steps are also tools by Zapier. So the first step right here is called Schedule by Zapier. And with this Schedule by Zapier, you don't need an event that happens inside of an app to run an automation, but you can trigger an automation based on a certain schedule. So in this case, I'm running the automation at the beginning of every month, but you could also run it every day, every week, every year, if that is what you wanted. And then the second step is a so-called formatter step, also super useful, and you can build quite advanced things with it. What this formatter step does is it takes the date that it received from the first step, subtracts 1 month from it so that we can get the invoice folder of the last month, and then it generates the name of the invoice folder. And then the next action can actually use this formatted date to find the invoice folder from the last month and then send it to my accountant. So quite some sophisticated things that you can build inside of Zapier. Okay, now you know how you can create your own automations inside of Zapier. But creating the automations is actually the easy part. The hard part is to come up with ideas for tasks that you can automate. And to help you with that, I have created a second video, which you can find right here, which includes a lot of different examples for tasks that you can build automations for. It's a really cool video, so definitely click on it and check it out. Thank you for watching. See you next time. My name is Mike. Have a nice day.